Welcome to A Warm Wind on the Mountain, Nurturing Kindness and Respect for the Woman's Nation. This is a program that's being brought to you by the San Diego Tijuana Revolutionary Poets Brigade. We start with a quote by a beat poet, Diane di Prima. And she said, "Poets speak truth when no one else can or will. That's why the hunger for poetry grows when the world grows dark. When repression grows, when people speak in whispers or not at all, they turn to poetry to find out what's going on." And the Revolutionary Poets Brigade would like to dedicate this evening to one of our own, Gary Winter, who is in hospice care right now. And we also want to dedicate the evening to Nirvana. Joe, did I say her name right?
Minerva.
Minerva, I'm sorry. Thank you. I knew I said something wrong there. To Minerva, who was a very strong poet with us for many years, and she has passed away. So to Gary, who doesn't have too much longer with us, and to our sister, who passed away a while ago, we dedicate tonight. Wanted to start tonight with the earlier this week. It was the birthday of Nazar Kabana, and I'm going to read to you about him. He was born in Damascus, Syria. His mother, who was illiterate, sold her jewelry to raise money to publish his first anthology, Childhood of a Bosom, 1948, which is the year I was born. And he went on to become one of the most popular poets of the Arab world, publishing more than 20 books of verse. Much of his poetry was influenced by the tragic deaths of two women he loved. When he was 15, his older sister committed suicide rather than be forced into marriage with a man she did not love, and he turned his attention to the situation of Arab women. He wrote romantic, sensual poems and poetry, demonstrating the need for sexual equality and women's rights. Many years later, in 1981, his second wife, an Iraqi woman, died during the Lebanese Civil War when the Iraqi embassy was bombed. Kubana was grief-stricken and frustrated with the political and cultural climate of the Arab world, and he lived in Europe for the rest of his life. We start with his poem. I knew when I said I love you that I was inventing a new alphabet for a city where no one could read, that I was saying my poems in an empty theater and pouring my wine for those who could not taste it. We hope you enjoy the taste of the evening tonight. We have some people that are going to be speaking on for women, for the Women's Nation, and we have people that are going to be reading poems for the same reason. I want to remember the mighty Kumeyaay Nation right now. If you are standing on San Diego soil right now when you're watching us, this is Kumeyaay land here. And two of the things that happen in the history of the Kumeyaay people are the boarding schools where their children, along with the Luiseño people that's in North County, and the Mountain Kuya that's out by Warner Springs, and the Kulpa, their children were taken from their homes and put in boarding schools. And the message of the boarding school was kill the Indian and save the white man inside the Indian. I believe the same thing happened in Mexico with the Kumeyaay. So we want to remember that, and we want to remember that there is a lot of Native American women who are being disappeared right now. No one knows where they are, and there's no statistics, no records being taken of the deaths of Indian women, the murders of Indian women, and the people who are being disappeared, the women being disappeared. So these are some things when we talk about having nurturing kindness and respect for women, these are some things that we feel need to be addressed. So I'm going to introduce our first guest speaker. She is a volunteer with Activist San Diego. Her name is Frances Yasmin Matiwala, and she ran for election in the U.S. House to represent California's 34th congressional district. She lost in the primary election on March 3rd, 2020. Frances was born in Chicago, Illinois. She attended Wheaton College, graduating in 2000. She's the Deputy Director of Development at Peace Action. She's an intersectional feminist, a political organizer. Her Instagram page says, former congressional candidate, full-time peace organizer, and then a quote from John Lennon, "You may say I'm a dreamer, I'm not the only one." And she charmed the audience in an Activist San Diego broadcast last week. So I asked her to come and charm you. She's not charmfully sweet. She's charmfully very, very intelligently. This is Frances Matiwala.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you for having me. Thank you all for being here. It's a delight to be part of this community. And I am going to be presenting a bunch of words that are not mine, but as the curator of the next 10 minutes ish, I am going to be channeling some folks. I'm going to start off with a poem by Yosano Akiko, a poem that I've loved for a long time, and it felt very appropriate for today's event. I will then share a bit of a feminist critique of the atomic bomb by Ray Atchison, and I'm going to put the link to the full critique in the chat, so you'll be able to read the whole thing. Though the bit that I will be sharing will just be part of it. It seems like someone might want to mute. I don't know. And the after that, I will share a bit about some current activities from the Federation of American Scientists about some current activities with a call to action. So, on that end, assuming we are good to go, can whoever has host privileges mute everyone just because it seems like that's not the case?
Yeah,
All right.
I just want to say really quickly, if you came in just now, please mute yourself to give the dignity to the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. The Day the Mountains Move by Yosano Akiko. The day the mountains move has come. I speak, but no one believes me. For a time, the mountains have been asleep, but long ago they danced with fire. It doesn't matter if you believe this. My friends, as long as you believe, all the sleeping women are now awake and moving. A Feminist Critique of the Atomic Bomb by Ray Atchison. Feminist scholar Carol Cohen wrote a story about her experience working with nuclear war strategists in the 1980s. In this story, a white male physicist working on modeling nuclear counterforce attacks exclaims to a group of other white male physicists about the cavalier way that they're talking about civilian casualties. Only 30 million, he bursts out? Only 30 million human beings killed instantly? The room went silent. He felt ashamed. This is an important story about nuclear weapons, or rather, about the ways in which those who think they benefit from nuclear weapons maintain their dominance over how we think and talk about these weapons. We're supposed to think about nuclear weapons as deterrents. Their advocates argue that the mere possession of nuclear weapons deters and prevents conflict. In the right hands, they're good for humanity. The argument goes, nuclear weapons are to be talked about in the abstract as magical tools that keep us safe and maintain stability in the world. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. So goes the slogan of the party in George Orwell's novel 1984. Weapons prevent war. So goes the realist discourse about nuclear weapons. But when it comes to nuclear weapons, who is really being unrealistic? Those who assume that we can exist in a world with all its tensions and conflicts and fears and instabilities and not see the use of nuclear weapons? Those who believe that a theory called nuclear deterrence, cooked up by nuclear war strategists, is infallible? Or is it those of us who see the inherent dangers in the atomic bomb and seek its abolition, who believe that security cannot credibly be based on threatening to commit genocide or to destroy the entire world? If we are willing to admit that there may be some flaws in the discourse of deterrence, we should ask, how has it survived and thrived? How has it usurped and held on to the mantle of realism for so long? A feminist analysis is very useful to answer this question. It can help us understand how nuclear weapons are a patriarchal tool and how it benefits the patriarchy to advocate for their continued existence in the arsenals of only a select few governments. The patriarchy is a social order dominated by men. In particular, men performing a certain brand of militarized masculinity that associates weapons and war with power. This form of masculinity influences the possession, proliferation, and use of everything from nuclear weapons to small arms. This is a masculinity in which ideas like strength, courage, and protection are equated with violence. It is a masculinity in which the capacity and willingness to use weapons, engage in combat, and kill other human beings is seen as essential to being a real man. This type of violent militarized masculinity harms everyone. It harms everyone who does not perform the gender norm: women, LGBTQI identified people, non-normative men. It requires oppression of those deemed weaker on the basis of gender norms. It results in domestic violence. It results in violence against women. It results in violence against gay and trans people. But this kind of masculinity also means violence against other men performing violent masculinities. Men mostly kill each other, inside and outside of conflict. Violent masculinities make male bodies more expendable. Women and children, obnoxiously lumped together in countless UN resolutions and media reports, are more likely to be deemed innocent civilians, while men are more likely to be considered militants or combatants. Often, in conflict, civilian men are targeted or counted in casualty recordings as militants only because they are men of a certain age. But militarized masculinity is not just about death. It's also a major impediment to disarmament, peace, and gender equality. It makes disarmament seem weak. It makes peace seem utopian. It makes protection without weapons seem absurd. The concept of nuclear deterrence is a product of the patriarchy. It is designed to justify outrageous behaviors by those with power and privilege. The behavior of spending billions of dollars on weapons that risk the world's total destruction in order to maintain that power and privilege. And those espousing this theory have managed to maintain their dominance over nuclear weapons debate by employing the tools of the patriarchy, such as gaslighting and victim blaming. So that's from Ray Acheson. And then just quickly, I will share what is happening right now. The Pentagon is currently planning to replace its current fleet of intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, with a brand new missile force known as the Ground-Based Strategic Deterrent, or GBSD. This program consists of a like-for-like replacement of all 400 Minutemen III missiles that are currently deployed across Colorado, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, and Wyoming. and will include a full set of test launch missiles as well as upgrades to the launch facilities, launch control centers, and other supporting infrastructure. The GBDS program will keep ICBMs in the U.S. nuclear arsenal until 2075 and is estimated to cost approximately $100 billion in then-year dollars in acquisition fees and $264 billion in then-year dollars throughout its life cycle. However, critics of the GBSD program, which include a chorus of former military commanders and secretaries of defense, top civilian officials, current congressional committee chairs, subject matter experts, and grassroots groups, are noting a growing number of concerns over the program's increasing cost, tight schedule, and lack of 21st century national security relevance. Many argue that the GBDS's price tag is too high amid a plethora of other budgetary pressures. So, to that end, the Biden administration should immediately launch a National Security Council-led strategic review examining the role of ICBMs in the U.S. nuclear strategy. To that end, I need you to commit to calling your 2 senators and your representative and asking them to vocally oppose any further investment in ICBMs and nuclear weapons. Humanity has a common will and right to survive. Thank you.
That's Frances. Can we show her some love, please?
Oh, yeah.
All right. That was really nice. And I want to welcome the people who came in a little late. If you are interested in reading in the open mic, Etta, please put your name in the chat room. And we would love to hear you read when the brigade is finished. Is Sharon Elise here? I do not see her.
Hey,
Sharon? No, she's not here. So we will we'll go on. Frances, that was great. Thank you very much. We are not in the grace of Sharon Elise, but we are in the grace of Pilar Rodriguez Aranda, who, when she comes to read with us, and she's able to tear her away from her terribly successful bookstore in Tijuana, we are amazed at how there's no wind and her hair blows in the wind. We are amazed at how she is like a woman bullfighter, and that bull has no chance at all because she is the poster woman in Tijuana for social justice. This is Pilar Rodriguez Aranda.
I don't know about that, but thank you for the presentation. Okay, Jim, you're showing you're a poet. That's showing off. Thank you so much for inviting me. I keep forgetting sometimes that it's like, oh, March, yes, it's Women's Month. And but you know, I did read. I like the idea of the nurturing the women's nation, and which can mean a lot of things for a lot of people. But a lot of my work has always been about being a woman. I mean, I am a woman, but doesn't mean doesn't mean all women necessarily focus their work on women as a subject, but you know, like this, you can see my my book. It's called Women's Story. So I'm gonna make a little bit of publicity, which I never do, but always Jim tells me about to talk about the bookstore, and I always forget at the end. So I'm showing the work. I'm gonna read a poem from this CD. And I'm just showing them because you can find them at the bookstore. And if you come to Tijuana, we're right in downtown. It's really easy to find us. You can write to me in Facebook and I'll tell you how to get there and maybe we can meet. I'm usually there on Sundays. So if you want to meet, you know, I'm there. And we're open from 11 to 7 p.m. And we do have books about, you know, Baja, about Tijuana, we have some stuff in English. variety of things. We can get you books that you need, So, you can contact us, like I said, in Facebook. So thank you for that. And it is, both. It's really it's an old bookstore, has a lot of tradition here in Tijuana. And I come in as the new element and the feminist element into it. And so that's my addition to the bookstore. And so you're welcome to come and also suggest things that you think you might want to see there. So without going any further on that, the poem I want to share with you, I'm going to read it in both the original Spanish. I very recently was participated in a goddess festival with the Beat organization, National Beat. I am terrible with names. I'm sorry. And anyway, I did a very quick translation of this poem that I've read many times. It's like I said. It's in this CD with live music. And I wish I had my band, to do it, and maybe we'll do it sometime when we can meet again. But tonight I'll just do a bilingual version. I'll probably start with the Spanish and maybe mix it a little bit. And I won't say anything. I think the poem speaks for itself, and it's for all of you witches, women who are here and will be watching this later on. And the poem is called We Are Goddesses, Somos Diosas. Somos diosas en ruta envueltas en piel humana, arteriadas y sangrantes como el universo, amantes con temor a darse con deseo, con temor a perder el poder, pues suena a muerte. Somos sirenas aladas, águilas cubiertas de escamas, formas tubulares y anguladas de lunar esencia permeadas. Eterna repetición de un movimiento opuesto. Vapor y fango. Negro y blando, ligero y pesado. Somos guerreras que han perdido batallas, víctimas que derrotan al mísero destino, extendiendo brazos y cuerpo en las 4 direcciones para luego cantar como ángeles de tosca voz. We are goddesses en route, wrapped in human skin, arterial and bleeding like the universe. Lovers, fearing to give themselves in desire, fearing the loss of power, because it sounds like death. We are winged mermaids, eagles covered in scales, tubular and angled forms permeated in lunar essence, eternal repetition of an opposite movement, vapor and sludge, black and soft, heavy and light. We are warriors who have lost battles, victims who defeat the measly destiny, extending arms and body in the 4 directions in order to sing like angels of unpolished voice. Amanece y somos mujeres bárbaras de nombres múltiples, codiciosas y sufridas, Juanitas y Rosarios. It's dawn and we are barbarian women of multiple names, greedy and suffering Fridas, Juanitas and Rosarios, omen and fortune tellers light, containing and banishing us, an empty and alien belly, aquatic and dark. Somos menstruantes, madres que viven muerte y ensueño, espíritus tambaleantes de carne pulsante. We are menstruating mothers who live, death, and dream, staggering spirits of pulsing flesh. Breast and clitoris filled of humidity and suspicion, tunnels of doubt, veins of insecurity. Somos adoradoras de nosotras mismas, despiadadas críticas desde nuestra simple soledad. Somos, además, testigo una de las otras. We are worshippers of ourselves, merciless critics from our simple loneliness. We also bear witness, each one of the others. I look at you, you look at her, we look at each other. El rito ha dado inicio. The ritual, the ceremony has begun. Muchas gracias.
Yeah, can we give some love for Pilar? Thank you very much for coming. So our super tech is with us, Alfred Williams. Brother, I just made you co-host. And I can continue doing the procedure we talked about where I'd make the person who's reading the focus and the other people go in the background if you'll take care of the other stuff. No problem.
Did you start recording?
Yes, we're recording already.
Okay, good.
And stay right there. This gentleman is a genius. He's currently, yeah, you are. He's currently involved with building one of the brigade's websites. He built my website for me, and I want to say that if you'd like to talk to Mr. Williams about him helping you out, talk to him in the chat room, give him your information, and he'll get in touch with you. The person who trained me to do this was Jimmy Collins, and he was a Black Panther back in the day, so he was all about connection and bridging to people for all cultures. And so that's why I wanted Pilar to talk about her bookstore and show you her book and her CD, because we need to support one another. And I can speak highly of this man. He knows where good barbecue is too. So, so we'll just go from there. So continuing on, we're going to introduce our next speaker. She's a poet and a speaker. And there's been a lot of violence against Asian people. And I gave her a shout to ask her to come. This is Ying Wu, and she's a Writers Resist editor. She's a poet and cognitive scientist and host of an open mic when the COVID goes away. It's down in Hillcrest. She's a proud member of the editorial team of Kids San Diego Poetry Annual. She made sure there were a lot of workshops for children that were elementary school all the way up to middle school. And her work can be found at Poetry and Art at the San Diego Art Institute, in Clackamas Literary Review and the Serving House Journal, and in the Material World at the San Diego Airport. Ying lives with her husband and daughter, her daughter's also a first grade poet, on a sailboat in the San Diego Bay. This is Ying Wu.
Thank you, Jim. Can everyone hear me okay?
We're good.
Great, thanks. Yeah, if there's ever a problem with the sound, let me know. Sometimes my microphone kind of like gets funny. But yeah, I wanted to thank you, Jim, for organizing this event and for inviting me. It's great to see so many, friends, familiar faces and new faces. And for me, speaking out is something that, I really need to practice. So I see this as a wonderful opportunity. As an Asian woman, I actually don't really get much practice speaking out. It's not something that we typically do in my culture. So, I'm very, very grateful to be here and grateful to hear all the wonderful poems and the speakers, and just being part of a community of other people who care and who care about the world we live in and the kind of world that our children are going to grow up in. And it's really, interesting, or it's a sad coincidence, but after Jim called me to invite me to participate in this event, there were two really horrific acts of violence. There was the shooting of several Asian women in Atlanta in massage parlors. And then after that, there was a shooting of several people at a grocery store in Colorado. There's so much violence in this world right now. And, since that shooting happened, there's been an raised awareness of violence and acts of racism against Asian Americans. Over 3,800 acts of hatred have been documented just in the past year. And what's interesting, or what's I guess interesting in a sad way, is really part of what causes this is just our own words. If we think about where racism comes from, where violence and where hatred comes from, part of where it starts is our own words. It's been shown that right after Trump started calling the COVID-19 virus the China virus, there was an uptick in violent social media posts and hatred against Asians. So it was really the words that started that. And what you can notice is a lot of times these are very subtle things. A lot of times when people do things that provoke violence or hatred, they don't come out and say, I'm going to say something racist and hateful now. Here it comes. They say something subtle. They say the China virus. Or I remember one person telling me, trying to convince me that in the days of slavery, the slaves were better off than their masters. I didn't buy it. I remember listening on the radio to a quote from one of the members of the law enforcement in Atlanta talking about the shooting in the massage parlors, and saying that the shooter was just having a bad day. He said he was at the end of his rope and he was having a bad day and he did this. And so it's very subtle things like that that actually really frame how we understand the world. People trying to say, well, this act of violence was not racist. It was just a bad day. So the good news, though, or the upside, is that even as with our own words, we can drive each other apart. And I think that's one of the ways that hatred really begins. We can also come together. The opposite of racism, I think, is connection. It's understanding, it's openness to different perspectives. And we achieve that through communicating, through talking, through speaking out, through writing, and through poetry. And so I really think that it's by coming together through our words and as a community that we actually achieve pretty much the opposite of hatred, and that we can overcome hatred. So that having been said, I would like to read a poem I wrote really about this topic, about the words that we use. But before I do that, I would just like to make an announcement about the Kids San Diego Poetry Annual Workshop that I'm teaching with Francisco Bustos on May 22nd. So Jim mentioned, Kids San Diego Poetry Annual. That's something that Bill Harding spearheaded several years ago, and I joined that team. And we organize workshops all over San Diego. Jim has taught several workshops for kids ages 6 to 12, and then we publish their poems in an anthology and where they can read their poems in public, a public event. And I really love this program because I think it's so important to get children involved in poetry and give them an opportunity to explore themselves, their own ideas, their thoughts, their feelings in a way that's different from how they might usually be given opportunities to do that, as in a school assignment or a letter or a lot of the other kinds of things that writing that kids do. So if anybody knows of a child of this age range who might want to participate, please, please, please go to the Escondido Library website. The event will be posted on the event page soon. You can also find out more at ksdpa.com. And this event, by the way, will be on Zoom. So it's hosted through the Escondido Library, but anybody anywhere can participate, actually. So the poem I'm going to read yeah, Deborah, yeah, the San Diego Poetry Annual, the regular one is for older children. They can publish there. So the poem is really something I wrote. I was inspired to write it during the earlier years of the former administration when, just so many terrible things were being done to families fleeing the violence of their home countries and seeking asylum in the US. And there were so many stories of children being taken away from their families and of parents being deported back to their home countries without their children and having no idea if they would ever even see their children again. I know that the Biden administration is working to reunite families, children and parents that are still not together. There's still hundreds of them that need to be reunited. So this poem is called, we call it Family Separation. So we call it family separation because abstractions make it easier on mornings when you're running late and the lid is stuck and the toast is burnt and your child hates her pleated pinstripe poplin uniform. And in your mind, there are horizons, but hurry now, it's time to go. And in your mind, there are also borders between here and there and us and them, and people are pleading to cross those borders. But your child's still in underwear, and you haven't found her lace-up shoes or bleached the mold behind the sink, or paid the rent, or packed the juice, or killed the weeds beyond the patio. And the TV calls it family separation, but you feel your heart beating now and now and now. We're told they don't belong here, but your heart is made of spaces meant to open. And we're told our country is a nation of laws, but the ones who do the telling are the ones who speak in shadows, who call it ethnic cleansing, who call it population transfer, who call it bonded labor, who call it forced assimilation, who call it habitat reduction. And your heart is made of petals as you rush your child down the sidewalk. There's a warning bell at 8 o'clock, then a final bell at 8:05. Your heart is streaked and fluted. Your heart is made of sunrise, made of rhythm, made of ebb and flow and openings, but the gates are locked at 8:06. And your child's hand just fits in yours. You're waiting at the crosswalk, but the traffic won't slow down. And at the border, there are parents pleading for their children, but cars roar by and no one stops. And you think you know how it could feel without the one whose heart once beat inside you, without the one you rock to sleep, without the one whose hand just fits in yours. But any minute now the bell will ring and you see the sky. You were meant to look across the sky. You bore a child, but they can take her. They can take away your child and sneer that you deserve it. They can break you. There are shattered parents pleading for their children, and cars rush by through the saffron mist of sunrise. The street is paved in asphalt. There are children screaming terror, pleading for their parents. You clutch your child's hand in yours and stand together at the crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. So I wrote that poem because I really feel the words we use and how we talk about things really influences our actions, our deeds, our attitudes towards it, and really how we treat each other. So if I have one hope, it's that through poetry, we can come together more closely and treat each other better. Thank you.
Thank you again. Can we give Ying some love, please? Thank you so much. And I'd like to say that I'm very grateful to you. They had me go out to the school where I started teaching on Rincon Reservation and do a kids San Diego Poetry Annual Workshop. And she published, I would say, about a third of the poems in that book. Ying made sure the Indian children were published in that book. And that, what happens when you have that kind of a project is student self-esteem goes up, family self-esteem goes up, and community self-esteem goes up. Because that's a dominant society journal or book. And those kids were right along with all the kids that weren't Indian. So thank you very much for giving those children a voice, Ying. I really appreciate you. So we're going to move right
Yeah,
along.
my pleasure.
Pardon me?
My pleasure. That was a wonderful addition, and I really like the kids' poetry from your workshops.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So there's a lot of love in the chat room. If you haven't been looking at the chat room, there's ways to get a hold of Frances and the things she talked about, the article she talked about. Pilar also has information about her bookstore and how to get a hold of her. And if you want to see that Kids San Diego Poetry Annual book and you like to purchase that, go to the San Diego Poetry Annual website and you can see the beautiful work that Ying did and all the teachers that taught did. So we're gonna be really grateful to our speakers so far. But now I've got to introduce to you a man who has been nominated for several Pushcart prizes. The most incredible thing about this poet, besides being a member of the brigade, is that when he was in the Army, he was in this very difficult white glove inspection, and he passed the inspection because of a clam. He had a pet clam that helped him tremendously. This is Joe Malash.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, usually I just like to roll on and tell an anecdote before I read. But tonight, I'm not feeling funny. Because if you've been watching the news and saw what happened in Georgia today, among all the other stuff that's been going on, and how they treated the Congresswoman, was just pretty difficult. So if you don't mind, I'd like to have a moment of silence to stand in solidarity with the Georgians who are going through a real tough time. Okay, and this poem is called Imperial Beach After a Day of Sedition, January 6. I'm sitting on this jetty beside the pier. Along the coastline, aquamarine water rises sickle-shaped and crashes like the courage of those Republicans corrupted by their delusions of power? Were they reassured by the mob's perverted demands for blood? Their voices like a plague of croaking frogs, their feces spread across the Capitol walls like gulls, whitewash these primeval rocks with theirs. Bursting over the breakwater, the waves are supercharged washing machines, and I wonder about the power of the ocean. Could it ever eradicate the stain of their sedition? Sinking behind the horizon, the sun is not without hope, but it aches and mourns. Behind the fog, the night becomes a bird shadow, flowing over some matted kelp, swarming with gnats. A seagull lands near a half-eaten starfish. The wind barks in the cleft of a sandstone cliff. I again remember the image of the mob, the cop's eye gouged, and those congressmen who holstered their guns, buttoned up their suits as calls to hang Mike Pence bounced off the walls. Their treasonous acts will never be erased by time, tide, or wind. Only the weather will visit their graves. The fog thickens and the moon watches the sea erasing bird tracks, while across the sand, a streetlight casts the shadow of a pensive old man. He is soul sick, but not without hope. Thank you. And so I went to Ireland, and the Irish, I'm part Irish, but the Irish are pretty good. And they have, if you go back into their mythology, they have the Irish goddess of spring. And she says that whatever you grow, your crops, or if you have dairy farms, if you share it with the poorest among you, you will prosper. But if all you do is sell your goods and profit, you won't prosper. And so when they converted the Irish to Christianity, of course, the Irish made their goddess Bridget a saint, and so they call her Saint Bridget. And this is called the Song to Bridget. After an all-night rain, these Irish lakes are clear. The trout are restless. They swim near the shore and underneath the shadows of the hooded crows. The air is icy and clear. After leaping for a fly, a fish splashes, and under the water, boulders take the shape of a woman napping. Driven by the Arctic wind, thunderclouds darken over the farms in the far fields. Suddenly, a small frog hops into the lake. The land becomes quiet as a chapel inside a church. After the lapping of waves, whispers of water fairies. The muffled wind becomes a creaking church door, and the crows mumble their caws as if they're not allowed to speak their language. Believe me when I say that now rain falls into the lake like pearls. Now Bridget steps out, heroic in her nakedness and nobler than the sun. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for coming, man. Joe did 8 to 10 phone shifts for Seed the Vote. And he, before the January 5th election, the Senate runoff in Georgia, he phoned about 50 people in each of those phone shifts. And he is part of the group of people that helped to flip the Senate. So thank you for that work, Joe. This event is being filmed. If you do not want to, if you came in a little late and you don't want to be seen as being part of this, we understand that. Please turn your camera off, and you can say your name is John or Jane Doe or whatever you want to say there. But we want to just let you have the choice about being filmed or not being filmed. And so everyone's doing such a good job on keeping to your designated time. Poets have 5 minutes, speakers have 10 minutes. And there's a lot of people waiting to still perform. So thank you for sticking to your times. We're going to move right on now. And I want to introduce you to my sister, who is a musician and a poet. And when a bunch of us went up to LA to a place called St. Elmo's Village, there were young poets and other poets of other ages. And then there was me, the dinosaur. And we all went up there, and she walked into the room where a lot of the workshops were being taking place and where we were going to perform. And she immediately went over to a piano and started to play. And it was just amazing. She's just amazing musician and poet. This is a very talented Dolores Fisher. And please unmute yourself, because we can't hear you.
Louder? We're
There
okay.
you go. All right, now you're good.
I'm unmuted. There we go. Okay. Now, first of all, I have to preface with what I'm saying, basically to let you know that I'm trying to slow down my disappointment and my anger and my frustration. I have watched young African Americans on spring break, and I'm embarrassed by their behavior. I don't care if others say, well, you know, we don't see anything happening to those who are not Black. As my father used to say, it's no excuse for you to behave that way, just because everybody else does. So I'm really pulling back, okay? And it's on tape, and you know, I'm out there stating it. You don't have to physically attack somebody on a beach while everybody else is dancing. Those of you who were there, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, as I calm myself down, also the things in Georgia and Colorado, and some things that have been happening over the internet that many people have not necessarily been talking about. There was a young Filipino man who had the police put their knee on his neck. I tweeted about it. He was having a mental health breakdown, and the family wanted him helped, but the police put their knee on his neck, and as blood was pouring out of his mouth and his mother was saying, stop, stop, the young man died. So it's not just George Floyd, okay? And I'm also upset about people of color attacking people of color. We're here to talk about healing. And when Blacks turn around and do the kind of things that we do to other people of color, it really makes me angry and it really frustrates me, because then we seem like we're hypocrites. And I'm here to stand and say, that's exactly what it looks like. You can say blaming the victim. I say no. If you want to be better, be stronger. With that said, my first poem is still in process, and it's entitled, I Run to the Hills. Run, run, must run, springbok run, leaping on wilderness trails of a broken mind. Cut across sharp edge corners of inner crossroads, a reckoning. A shallow, opaque shadow, circles, labyrinthine mazes that lead to secret knowledge hidden among hills from which comes my help. Sprint, sprint, must sprint. Springbok sprinting, leaping over briar patch. There's no Brer Rabbit here. Embracing cloud gray whirling skies, kicking dust pebbles in wastelands of hate hidden hearts. Mountains, mountains, rappelling up the rough mountainside as night falls onto valleys of the dry bones, of the sly bones, of the liar bones. Aching soul on the run, reacting in unexpected quiet. Mountaintop must keep on. Oh, what's wrong, Dolores? It was only a joke. Mountaintop at last, free, free. Race jokes rarely end well for those at whom they are projected and used as bludgeons of false camaraderie. I am on the mountaintop. They are far away in their laughter in the valley of dry bones. They only see my silence and laugh harder, but I do not trigger. They see my blank face, quiet eyes, neutral body posture, and they keep laughing and laughing, adding one racial joke to another and laughing. They do not see my tight, the snare of someone who's about to pounce, but doesn't. Inside my soul, I collapse in everlasting arms that comfort me, give me rest, quietly beside deep, still waters. My sneer becomes a smile. I embrace Ubuntu. And my last poem, because my parents were from Georgia, and I thank you for mentioning what happens in Georgia. They left Georgia, went back to visit, but never went back to live. This is entitled Familial Love. Soft silhouettes smile from a silky brown memory screen, dancing wisps of fragrance and red roses, lilacs, tulips, and dreams, inviting me into childhood joy, into Mama's rock garden. Morning kisses the sky, touches my curly, kinky hair. Daddy is at work. Siblings are at school. On top of the fridge, our black and brown radio moans the blues. Mama's listening to Jimmy Lyons and the Lion's Den. See, brother Jimmy, he likes to mix blues and jazz, and so Art Blakey comes on. Art Blakey and the Messengers lay a groove down so tight I run from living room toys in uncontained delight. Grab Mama's apron and twirl. Oh, I do twirl. Her slanted eyes look into mine, and she laughs. I can't help it, Mama. She knows that. And she bends and kisses my forehead and holds me tight. The darkest of 4 children, I'm still her baby, I'm still her child. I twirl through vestibule out of the screen door, 2-stepping at 5 years old or so, as if I were 30. That's what I've been told. Mama glances out the screen door, watches me, smiles with me, stepping smoothly just inside the door. We do groove, we do groove. She knows I can't help it. She's a musician too. Mama silently glides back inside, sharing our world and humming and humming and humming. stirring with that big wooden spoon, blending ham, hocks, and greens. Supper will be done soon. Daddy will be home, and sis will help set the table. When Daddy gets home, he grills sis and my big brothers about school, keeping them from teasing me, away from my music, my dreams, my smile, as my mom says softly, would you leave her alone, y'all? We sit and Daddy blesses the food. Mama smiles across the table into my eyes. Daddy tells her she cooks so good he could hurt himself. When we're all done, dishes washed and set in covered spaces, we watch television while making ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow for me is Mama, the radio, music, and dancing in Mama's rock garden. Thank you.
Thank you, my sister. You just witnessed one of the reasons that I love being a poet among poets. My goodness. And I've been listening to this woman since the mid-90s down at Claire de Lune's when she was performing with some other women, and she never disappoints. Thank you for reading tonight, my sister. And so we're our last speaker for the evening is someone I heard at that same show that Activist San Diego was doing with KNSJ. And she was speaking about a feminist foreign policy, which would mean no war. Her name is Grace Siegelman. She's the coordinator of the Feminist Foreign Policy Project with Code Pink. She's from the suburbs of Chicago and studies peace, justice, and conflict studies at DePaul University. She spent most of her college career focusing on peace and abolitionist organizing in the Midwest. Please welcome Grace Siegelman.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I love when I get to listen to poetry. I don't get to do it often, but when I do, it centers me, brings me back down to earth. So I thank you all for letting me hear you speak and letting me be in space and community with you tonight. As I did last week at the ASD meeting, I wanted to acknowledge the tireless work of Jody Evans and other coordinators here at the Feminist Foreign Policy Project. They created this space for feminist writers, academics, organizers, and creatives that contribute to our collective meaning of a feminist foreign policy. So to define what a feminist foreign policy is, I first wanted to define what it isn't. Similar to Frances, I will be quoting a lot from other feminist organizers and educators tonight to give our collective meaning of feminist foreign policy. I want to take a quote to begin with from one of our discussions. We had the pleasure of being in conversation with Dr. Tithi Bhattacharya, an associate professor of South Asian history at Purdue University. He discussed what feminist foreign policy meant to her, and she described it as no feminist bombs, no feminist drones, and no feminist war. Feminist foreign policy does not look like women being put in the positions to push the buttons and bomb civilians or enact imperialist agendas. Simply by putting women in positions of power does not mean they're going to act in feminist agendas. As Tithi describes, feminist foreign policy does not mean putting women in power of destruction, imperialist companies, departments, and sectors of society that promote the war economy. So what is a feminist foreign policy? Well, we know foreign policy to be the relationships between state actors, and currently most foreign policies, especially the United States, are acting in masculine, destructive, and cruel policies that benefit the elite and wealthy of their own populations and that of their allies. They work in the benefit of profits rather than the safety of their own civilians and those around them. A feminist foreign policy is one that would promote politics and ways of life that liberate all women and all people. A feminist foreign policy works to meet the needs of all people, working to ensure community, peace, and diplomacy instead of financial gains and imperialist motives. Although many states right now are saying that they are putting women's rights at the forefront of their foreign policies, we see this in France, Canada, and Sweden. We have to take a closer look into what they're actually doing under those titles. Feminism, a lot of the time, has been co-opted and used to instead promote imperialist ideas in states. The US also does not work under a feminist foreign policy, although it says it does work in favor of women's rights. We know this not to be true most of the time, given that the US has over 1,000 military bases all around the world. These bases are not welcomed by the people, and no matter who you put in charge of them, men or women, they will not be feminist initiatives and will not promote a feminist foreign policy. The US military is one of the biggest polluters as well, and we sanction countries during a global pandemic, prohibiting vital medicines and resources to countries that desperately need them. And in our own country, rights to abortions, reproductive health has become so restricted and limited, and incarceration, both inside and outside the US, has torn communities apart, making it so difficult for so many Americans to believe in a future for themselves. None of this is feminist, and none of this promotes a peaceful and feminist foreign policy. So, through the feminist foreign policy here at Code Pink, we seek to contribute to a world without war and violence, where militarism is replaced by cooperation and diplomacy, where poverty is eradicated by replacing capitalist structures of exploitation with sharing, compassionate economies that take care of all people, where the goals of environmental protection, racial equity are the guiding principles of our foreign policy. We hope to promote educators, organizers, writers, creatives, all who want to dream of a future free from the war economy. As I said before, Jody Evans, when she started this campaign, saw that Code Pink and so many other anti-imperialist, anti-war, anti-military organizations were doing the work to expose and define why we should not be living under a war economy and not living under imperialist agendas. But she saw that we need to build a foundation and a community that could educate each other and build a movement ready to create a feminist foreign policy, ready to create a peaceful future. And that is why the Feminist Foreign Policy Project exists today. In conclusion, we here at the Feminist Foreign Policy Project believe that feminist foreign policy is about the care of others, about the care of the planet, and about being in solidarity with all other movements trying to liberate and love their people. If we move past the superior need to make commodities and instead put the need to make community and love as a superior agenda, we will be on the path towards a feminist future and towards a peace economy. As Dr. Tithi Bhattacharya describes, we need to invest in life-making jobs over thing-making jobs. We need to invest in our communities, and we need to invest in peace. That is all I have for you tonight. I'm going to drop some links in the chat to our socials and to some webinars and other articles and resources we have on our webpage.
Thank you, Grace. I can remember the chant, support the troops. And then when the feminists got a hold of that chant, they said, support the troops, bring them home. Bring them home. We have 22 veterans a day that are committing suicide in our country. There are some of us that do 22 push-ups a day to remember those men and women who weren't able to come home. And so, Grace, thank you for putting your information in the chat so people can get in touch with you in the future. And thank you for coming tonight. I'm really glad that we're recording this so we can air it again on KNSJ, and your message will be continued to be repeated. I think it's a very important message. Thanks a lot.
Jim,
Yes.
Jim, can I add one more message? I think would be remiss not to mention that Activist San Diego is a member of a coalition called the Grassroots Global Justice Alliance, which is a coalition partner in in the feminist movement building work that Code Pink and groups like Women Cross DMZ and Madre are all part of. So as a member of Activist San Diego, one can join for working group meetings where we're actively meeting and developing and thinking through what a feminist foreign policy is and how we make it happen. So, and again, I'll put my contact info, and Grace just put some other stuff in there. So looking forward to building together with you all.
Thank you, Francis. That's really important information. I'm glad you're putting that in the chat. Thank you. And thanks again for coming tonight. Appreciate you a lot. So the last poet in the brigade tonight is a poet and a painter like Jimmy Collins was. This is something that I got from him a long time ago. Can you see her reflection in the mirror behind her? That's a painting too. And as a matter of fact, he stopped writing for a while to devote more time to the visual arts. And then next thing we know, he was the beat poet of San Diego. And then he was the beat poet of California. And now he's the beat poet of the United States. And don't offer him decaf. This is Chris Vanoy.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's good to see everybody here. It's been a stressful pandemic, huh? The first poem I'm going to read tonight, if I can get it up here, is a poem I wrote down in Florida. It's about domestic violence. It's called Volatile Situations. The earth shakes plates from sheltered niches. Quietly you collect the dishes, cracked ones first and whole ones last, after the quake has passed. You put away the smoking gun, its fever broken, the errand done, a package on your doorstep left, to the right side all alone. You patch its hole with a herringbone, then tuck away the rest of the day into its proper places, each to each. The empty spaces crowd the full ones, the cups unclasped. You fall here shattered, broken glass. The second one's a subject very near and dear to my heart. It's about homelessness. This one's called My Bench. Hey, you, get off my bench. That's my bench. It's got my name on it right there. Go on, get out. Fella can't find his own place to sleep at night. Right there, it says Chris Vanoy. Right there. A man has to sleep where his name is, don't he? He says a man remembers bed with silken sheets and warm women laying cradled beside him. He says, went to sleep, woke up, whined. Now I'm here, I lay my head, he says, a bench for a bed and dreams to lighten me to sleep, he says, and his eyes closed. That's all I got, Jim. Go ahead. Everybody else has said everything. I don't have anything else to add, man.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for coming, and appreciate you a lot. Okay, so let me look at my schedule here, and I think what's supposed to happen now is we're going to go right into the open mic. So if you need to get a drink of water or go to the bathroom or something, come back as soon as you can, because we have some very, very talented people. We're going to move one poet up to the front because she's away from 2 time zones from us now. And she was a writer for the San Diego Free Press. And she's a poet was when she lived here, she was at a lot of open mics. This is Jeannie Crescenzo. One poem each for each poet, please.
Jeannie.
Hey, thank you.
Jeannie.
So I've recently moved to New Hampshire, and this is my first day in 4 weeks that I have internet access. So this poem is called Moving to New Hampshire. At first, it felt like biting into an unripe persimmon. The furry fuzzies curled my tongue. At first, it felt like we made a word salad of our life with radicchio, arugula, and radishes rolling around my palate. Did we really need to pack it all in the middle of a pandemic just to land in a basement with a view of a cement wall? No cell coverage, no internet, no TV, just a dingy carpet and an air mattress. Who knew we could do with so little? Leaving our stuff sitting in storage, buying the Sunday paper just for the crossword puzzle, juxtaposing a jigsaw puzzle with pizza on a too small TV tray. Did we really have to do this? You held me inside like a mama bear when I sobbed. What if we made a terrible mistake when we are too old to undo it? Why did we travel so damn far just to trudge an icy mile uphill past shops closed for COVID in search of a cup of coffee, only to arrive at a McDonald's that would only serve drivers driving actual cars in their drive-through only open? Just to wait an hour in the dark for an Uber XL for extra large, driving up in a compact, driving off when he saw us looking like we were homeless, with our shopping carts piled with a detritus of Walmart capitalism, pillows and plastic dishes, towels, and a cheap-ass toaster. Did we really have to travel this far just to sleep all day, talk all night? Oh God, how we talk now and laugh. How we laugh now, because it's all so damn hysterical, and maybe we really had to go this far to come this far.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you for coming
Okay,
across the
I'm
nation.
gonna bow out because it's bedtime. So
Okay.
see you all soon. Bye.
Sweet dreams.
We miss you, Jeannie.
That was great, Jeannie.
Crohn's miss you, Jeannie. Shit.
So there's 3 poets in the open mic tonight who've come to my classes at San Diego Writers Inc. All 3 of them are humble, and all 3 of them, when they read their poems, you have this atmosphere in the room that is so still because the other poets are listening so hard, they don't even move because their poems are so powerful. Please welcome very gifted poet, Claire Accomando. Claire, you want to unmute yourself, please? There you go.
Okay, this is called Belated Thanks to My Mother, who left us at this time 26 years ago. Thank you, Mama, for your love of books, for filling the long white winter nights with brave knights in armors, troublesome Greek gods, Shakespeare and Mark Twain in French, and all the poems you loved. Thank you for wearing in public the garish scarves and harlequin skirts I made for you after you taught me to knit and pedal your new Singer sewing machine. Thank you for your sense of humor, for your rebellious spirit. Thank you for teaching me that eating a hot dog on Friday was less of a sin than teasing my brother on any day of the week. Thank you for showing me that a cup of hot chocolate and buttered bread were good remedies for small miseries. Thank you also for letting me know that being kind was important, but I didn't need to be kind to everybody. Tyrants and fanatics were the work of the devil, you said. And at times, it was important to speak up and protest. You favored the underdog. In your 80s, you were heckled for defending human rights. You smiled, wearing your banner, and wore the insults like a medal of honor. Merci d'avoir été ma mère.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for coming tonight. It's always good to
Thank
see
you.
you. And it was that time that we did the voter registration over at Malcolm X, and you showed up and we're in the audience. That was very special for me. It's good to see you then too. So our next poet is also someone who's like Claire, just the muse is kind to her. She's been sending me poems real recently that she's been on fire with, the muse. And I don't think you'll be disappointed at all. This is Anjali Nunn.
I, the woman. I am the face that doesn't lie. I am the woman who sighs. I, whose sights are set on high achievements and honors. I, who fly in the face of misogyny. I, who cry when my body becomes a cemetery of hatred and wrath. I, who am not abashed to say it's time to rise, to not despise the ignorant, the uninformed, the conformed, and the brainwashed norms of the other side. I have pride. I will not stand still, let others decide what my body can and will fight for, delight for, dream for. Revel in me. Revel in the newness of equality, not shame. Do not defame my honor or let squalor feed my dignity of human rights. I, the woman who sleeps at night, who comforts those with fright, who has her sights set on one more day. Do not ordain me. Do not restrain me. Do not claim or maim me. Not I, the woman, just I.
Thanks for coming tonight, Anjali. If you stop writing, I'm going to cry. Keep writing, please. So are you all folks getting your money's worth yet? Man, I don't know if you need me, but I need all of you. This whole thing, you know, Poet Among Poets thing, it just helps my sanity because there's some pretty rotten stuff going on right now. And I don't like the impunity that accompanies it. I think there's needs to be some consequences that maybe we can keep flipping the Senate and get the people elected that are going to make some consequences happen for this ridiculous. You're my America. The America with all the hate and the ignorance, that's not my America. Thank you, my America. Thank you for coming. So we have someone in graduate school right now for her MFA. And she's been doing a really good job lately by saying, I don't know if this is good. I don't know if this is a poem, because hold on to your socks when this lady reads, because if you don't, you won't have any socks on. She's going to blow your socks off. She's really, really good. This is Barbara Huntington. You knew it was you, didn't you?
Pick on me, Jim. I went back and forth between a gentle poem and my poem that I keep reading over and over because I want to be aware. I want to show my appreciation to the youth of this country and around the world who are working on all the global problems, the Sunrise Movement. But for some reason, I just want to read a gentle poem tonight, so I'm going to do that. In those moments, it was what I wanted. Pottery cup held warm, fragrant coffee, soft in my mouth. Its scent shared the garden with orange blossoms, lavender. That blue cup fit my crooked hand as if we had been together for eternity. Now of birdsong, comfort for a cool morning, warm hand, warm cup, warm mouth. Then came another morning, sweet grandchild, curious about the scent, the cup, carelessly left by the door when I welcomed him. His tiny hand grasped, but did not fit. And when grandma's cup slipped, he cried over the wet blue shards, or perhaps the shock of the breaking. A grandmother's fear first, grandson unharmed. I kept sadness hidden. After he left, I carried the pieces to my garden, placed them among well-traveled rocks and shells, near monarch milkweed, sage, sand. In this moment, I hold a new cup. My fingers fit a different way, but morning peace prevails. And as I contemplate the shards of my once perfect world, my heart fills with love for a tiny grandchild, a broken cup, another beginning.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Yeah, I knew after you've been to a couple workshops that I wasn't teaching you anything. That was your talent, not anything I did. And instead of the talent getting weaker, it's getting stronger with our last few poets here. I was taught to have the strongest poets go last in our brigade and in the open mic. So I am sitting here leading this evening because of this lady and a guy named Mark Cocono and a guy named Jimmy Collins. And this lady was the host down at Claire de Lune's. A lot of us that are here, we cut our eye teeth on how she showed us how to be a host. And then when she read her poetry, I thought I'll never be able to write like that. And it's gotten better. This is Cheryl Lateef.
Thank you, Jim. Those are some great days. So hang on. Sorry. So the poem I'm going to read tonight is, everybody's said more than enough about what's going on these days and the politics. And, with this being about women, I think one of the strongest thing that happens to a woman is being a mother, giving birth. And this is a poem about a friend of mine and the birth of his son. His wife and he had quite a scare with this. It's entitled For Onan. Oh, sweet boy, you arrived lost between dark and dawn, unsure about going on, longing for something we no longer know. One moment, how much fear can it hold? One breath not taken ends life before it begins. One breath brings you here. Your tiny fingers seek tether in this airy world, touch to ground you, arms to surround you, the sound of another heart close, echoing through. We gather you to us. Remember being held by one breathless moment. Whisper in your ear, welcome. Thank you.
You have that commute from Seattle, so thanks for coming all the way from Seattle. One lady from New Hampshire and one from Seattle. That's got to be Guinness Book of World Records. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
The gentleman that I'm going to introduce now does a lot for poetry in San Diego for seniors. Some of us call him Mr. Shakespeare. Some of us call him Arg. But he really does a lot for poetry, and I feel like he's a poet friend and a poet brother. This is Christopher R.
Arr. Yeah. Well, I thought I knew what I was going to read tonight, and then I heard Ying talk about words, and I thought, well, maybe this sentiment might be best expressed tonight. This is entitled Words. Words that can hurt. Words that can heal. Words spread like dirt. Words make thoughts real. Words without meaning, spawned mindless cause, slant politic leaning, and mandated laws. Words give us action. Words stop us dead, serve as distractions, get trapped in our heads. Deeds suffer shock. Words rot and sour, and talk has no walk, and purpose no power. Thank you.
Thanks, Christopher. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
So I think it's really appropriate. I sure didn't plan this, but our last poet, if you went over to Palabra, Ted Washington's open mic on yesterday, last night, you were able to smile because he's very, very clever as a poet. And I have a feeling we're going to smile at the end of this poem. This is a young man that started when Second Sunday was over at the Cafe Cabaret, and then we moved back over to the Space Bar, and he followed us, and we were really glad that he did. This is Shannon Fuji.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share this poem again on pies. You want a piece of me? Can you handle all of this? Or be on the verge of tapping out, being too much and having to dismiss? Pie showed 3.14 miles away for $3.14. Ratio from diameter to circumference. When it comes to sweet coconut custard pie, doesn't make any difference. People put baked goods as AirPods, such a pie on earring fashion. They fell out between stairs 3 and 4, quite a crusty innovation. Moon hits your eyes like a big pizza pie. That's amore. But the squeal for stepping on an eel, that's a more. Being a believer of Christ, on the other hand, my stomach worships and praises Allah mold. Getting a discount is half the pies. Missing my other half, not the same without you guys. Here in the land of the desert, dessert, I want soul custardy. Just like Lay's chips, can't have just one, but the whole entirely. Staying optimistic in a situation, remaining positive as you try, even if it doesn't happen accordingly, it's just a pie in the sky. Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you very much. And we have the engineer from KNSJ, Mitch is here with us. Thanks for joining us, Mitch. It's good to see you. And so we
Hey, how
are,
you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How long have you been here? Have you been here for a while?
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Oh, it's been wonderful.
So we have this tradition at these events where I'm going to read the last poem of the evening. It's called Carbon Farming in City Heights. And then after this is over, I'm going to turn the recording stuff over to Alfred. We'll stop recording, and if you want to visit with one another, we'll stay on. We'll stay on as long as there's people that want to talk to each other.
Okay.
And,
Well, I have a poem I could share that's not very long.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Why don't you be
Yeah.
the second last poem then? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It's called Mystical Moment, and it's about finding breakthroughs. I had this epiphany after going for a hike and watching the sunset. So it's called Mystical Moment. I sit alone in serenity in a mountain meadow next to the soothing flow of a trickling stream. A breeze blows through the trees as the forest whispers to me the secrets of the past centuries. The leaves rustle and sway as the wind breathes through this ravine. Mystical stories are told to me. My mind is open and clear of all pain and fear. As the mountain air takes away my worries and cares, for the first time I can truly see the beauty of the world around me, as lifelong curiosities are relieved through this epiphany while watching the colors of the sunset vibrantly displayed across the valley. The clouds collide and shine with pride as the white swirls absorb the sunlight that then illuminates my imagination and paints a portrait in my mind to give me hope through the night. My breath is taken away during these last mystifying moments of watching the burning embers of the fiery sky trying to stay alive. I reminisce the components of the choices that have led me through this life. A butterfly catches my eye as it peacefully flutters to the flowers nearby. Suddenly, I realize the power that dwells within this second to take advantage of the present and treasure what this mystical moment represents. I stand a changed man. I hike down the trail that I once stumbled and fell. I now overcome my faults, walking to a land where men will not understand by listening to the whispering of the trees.
Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks for letting me share.
No problem. No problem. So before I read this, I wanted to say that April is National Poetry Month, and the brigade is going to do another reading. We're not quite sure the date yet, but we have a young man who is also with Activist San Diego. His name is Yusef, and he's been really involved with the stopping police arrests that are lethal for unarmed Black people and people of color. And so we're basically going to dedicate our April reading to Black Lives Matter. And we'll be having some speakers. Among one is Yusef, just like we did tonight. I hope you didn't think the price was too exorbitant, and that you'll be able to afford to come back next month and be with us again and share a poem or two. This is again going to be broadcast on KNSJ. The gentleman that just read the poem is going to make sure that happens, along with Martin Eder, who's the straw that stirs the drink at Activist San Diego and KNSJ. And so we're looking forward to working more and more with having our poetry events on the air, so this consciousness can get amplified, and we can be part of change that needs to happen, not only in San Diego, but California and the rest of the country. Carbon Farming in City Heights starts with an epigram by a writer from the Cameroon. Her name is Mbolo Mbu. And this is a quote from her book, How Beautiful We Were, that was launched this month. I think she wrote these lines way before the COVID, which kind of gave me some goosebumps when I read it. A sickness had arrived like a thief in the night, an illness that brought fevers and raspy coughs, until soon death had grown more ruthless. They told us it would soon be over, that we would all be well in no time. I wanted to remember Mother Earth tonight. She's very, very strongly disrespected, and not much kindness is going to her right now. Mother Earth, your brow is drenched in perspiration, wet with sweat, skin hot to the touch, and the ice cap is melting. The suits say that's a lie. They avert their glance from fevers, from children in cages, from water they've soiled in Detroit. When they ignore these things, it's a sickness of their minds, a poverty of their souls. So many of them sicken the Senate. One clod flew to Cancun when Texas was frozen in ice and snow. They only see their wallets. To all else, they are blind. Auka, Haku, Aloha, Waka, say the Kumeyaay, my Chumash, Hawaiians, the Eskimo. All indigenous are teaching that our relatives are dying or are being rubbed out, erased, gone, like the wrong end of a pirate pencil balancing bogus books. The scientists say there were too many elephants. Pachyderms were eating forests into deserts, so they shot 40,000 elephants, and then those men in white coats discovered they were wrong. The forests kept turning into deserts when the huge relatives were gone. One biologist finally said, we were wrong. We didn't have to erase Mother Earth's huge children. And the cockatoo cried, damn right you were wrong. Mother Earth, you are feverous. The relatives with fins are being caught in miles of plastic choking the sea. The dolphins, the tunas, the sharks, the salmon, the rays. Mother Earth, there is salt in the sea from your tears. So many tears. Mother Earth, I can hear your tears touch small stones left from fracking. Mother Earth, I am carbon farming in my front yard in City Heights. I planted bamboo, which absorbs carbon, AKA CO2. I can hear moonlight flow in silver water down the hill. The moonlight song is the ancestors' melody. The words to the song warn. The ancestors sing the ancient song of the willow and the oak. Great Spirit, great mystery, Tukashila, Kankanut Mawa, the mystery behind the sun. Help us bend like the willow and not break like the oak. When that strongest tree is uprooted or breaks in the hot or cold wind. The cold wind of lonely, the hot wind of revenge. Help us to bend like the willow, the deep song that Mother Earth sings. So Mr. Al, why don't we, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and stop the recording. And can we give Al some love, please, for being with us tonight and protecting us from the Zoom bombers?
It's my pleasure.
And,
Thank you
I
very
hope
much.
you have. I hope you have your information in the chat. If anybody wants to contact you, brother, they can do that. And
I can do that.
thank you for coming. We're open for conversation.
Jim, you have to stop the recording on your end since you started it on your end.
Okay,